Welcome everybody to a sunny Oslo morning. Happy to see you all ready and bright. Let me introduce myself. My name is Morten Dybsland. I'm head of Statsbygg's R&D section, and I am responsible for this event. Let me take a minute to tell you 2 words about Statsbygg, for those who don't know us. Statsbygg is the Norwegian government's key advisor in construction and property affairs. We are a building commissioner, property manager, and property developer. Some figures. At any given time, Statsbygg has about 160 ongoing projects in every phase: initial phase, design phase, construction. And every year, we complete about 20 to 30 major projects. We have 2,350 buildings, 610 properties around Norway and also abroad. We have 2.7 million square meters. We have a property asset evaluated at around 4 billion euros. We have income of half a billion euros per annum. We develop properties, we provide guidance in purchase and leasing, and we are 860 people. About half of them are connected to our properties. Short about us. So why host a workshop day at IGLC? Well, it's quite simple actually. Our owners and clients demands that we deliver our projects within time, within budget, and to the quality we agreed upon. And lean construction is a key action for Statsbygg to fulfill those demands. Thus, lean construction has been a key R&D priority in Statsbygg. And more importantly, lean is now implemented in both design and construction phases in our projects. And today, you will meet some of the people from Statsbygg that are using lean. And our objective of this day is first to tell about our experience, and then to engage with top international researchers and practitioners to learn more. And I saw the participation lists, and I think we have the right people here. So I think we can fulfill those ambitions, but I will also stress that it is you who make this day a success or a failure. We should use this opportunity, be active, engage, ask questions, share knowledge. Finally, I would like to thank our hosts, Fafo, for having this event here today. And I would especially thank Sol Skinnaland, who has been the key driver for making this event happening. And I would say hiring her for doing that job has been a decision, a kind with lean. It has given me, the customer, a value, and it's been a really good process. So with that, Sol, I give the floor to you, and you will guide us through the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Morten. On behalf of Fafo, my research institute, and myself, I'd like to welcome all of you to this workshop titled Lean from a Client Perspective. The workshop is an innovation to the IGLC program this year, and we, the organizers, will do our very best to make this a successful event. And I'm sure so will our exciting presenters here today. And Morten have already pointed out that everyone's role in making sure this workshop will be an interactive and good one. As you can see from the program, it's running every 10 seconds, so you might get a glimpse of it. There are 2 sessions before lunch with presentations, and we'll put in a break for coffee at 10:45. The presenters have been allocated a 30-minute slot, and I've been asked to keep their presentations within a time frame of 20 minutes, leaving 10 minutes for questions, views and comments. After all, we want this to be an interactive event, so I urge you to take advantage of this opportunity to actively participate. After lunch, we'll meet here for an introduction to session 3. You will all be divided into groups to discuss issues related to Lean from a client perspective, which is then presented in a concluding plenary session at the end of the workshop. And Derek Drysdale will be the chair of the plenary session. In the little booklet provided, I hope you've all found it outside next to your badges. There you will find a list of participants together with a program, some practical information about this venue, and a list containing a few relevant publications available online from FAFO. And William, which by the way is my son, sitting on the front row here, he is the conference assistant today, and if you need anything, just grab hold of him or me and we'll sort things out for you. And last, as we have notified earlier, the 2 sessions before lunch will be streamed and recordings will be made available to you afterwards. Right, so let's start with the first session. Our first session start with our first presenter today is a board member of the Lean Construction Institute, a former project manager in design and construction for Universal Health Services. At the Universal Health Services, he's been the vice president of design and construction, responsible for all construction in 37 states across the USA. He's now employed at Disney, where his role is to help transform the delivery model from traditional development to integrated practices worldwide. Please welcome Bill Seed.
Can you hear this? Am I on?
Oh, you put it on. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Good morning. I speak relatively quickly, so if you don't understand, please raise your hand and I will slow down. Let me share a little bit about my experience. You can see that I have participated in over 100 integrated projects in the last 7 years. I actually take my start from our next presenter. The organization Sutter Healthcare helped to bring this process to the United States, and I followed in their footsteps. My claim to fame is that I carried this process more broadly from one geographical area across the United States. So you can see the size of my projects. 40 of them have been completed, delivered to the ownership group. 17 of them still in the construction phase, 60 in the design phase. In the United States, we specifically speak of IPD-ish or IPD-like. So I state that 59 of these are what I consider a full integrated Lean project delivery, meaning that we use Lean practices, we use Lean tools, but we also use the Lean contract, the multi-party integrated form of agreement. Our contracts would typically include 5 to 10 participants all signing one contract together. Why? Why do we do this? The construction industry is broken, very poor tool time, which is the actual hands-on productivity, very much waste in the process, Poor safety results, 3 to 4 people die a day on a construction site, 12 to 1,400 are injured every day. Poor delivery competence with respect to time and cost, of which all of those are the goals that we all strive for in our project delivery process. What is it, though, that an owner truly wants from a project? Predictable costs, confident ability to affect the cost, actually make the value decisions. So one of the very first tenets of Lean is to drive customer value. We, as customers, want to be able to affect those decisions. We don't want to be told. We want to make value decisions. And value decisions are not just based around cost, but they are based around total life cycle cost and many other reasons. We want a predictable delivery time, high compliance, fair cost. We understand that builders and designers need to make a profit, but we also want those prices to be fair. We want a safe environment, both during the construction process, but also after the program is delivered. I don't know about the rest of the world, but in the United States, in my personal experience, there has been an awful lot of fighting and finger pointing and claims and delays. We claim, my project managers claim, that one of the best outcomes of Lean project delivery is that there are no more stomach aches and no more headaches at the end of the day. So we all have a much better relationship. We spend our intellectual capital driving value as opposed to fighting and claims and delays. Healthcare specifically, so my background is healthcare. Healthcare projects have a fairly long delivery time, maybe as much as 5 years or more sometimes. Technology changes dramatically from day one till delivery date. We need flexibility in order to keep up with that technology. Also, big healthcare debates across the world, and so the delivery models are changing. So the buildings need to change, which also oftentimes means change during the development process. We don't want to be terribly disruptive, but at the same time need the ability to change. And the best way we have found to do that is through partnering as opposed to a more low bid transactional type relationship. We also strive for long-term partnerships. If you don't know yet, you will soon learn that there's a fairly large learning curve here. There's a lot of mental change that has to happen, the way people think. There's a lot of energy and effort put forth through that, and so we don't want to have to change the partners that we use on a regular basis. Although we may have a large group of partnerships, we want to train our partners. We want our partners to help train us so that we learn together, and then over time the process as a whole improves. So what is integrated Lean project delivery? It truly is an owner's mind shift. We want to hire teams to act as professionals, including the builders. The builders can truly add value during the design process. This may appear to be an additive cost, but it's truly not. It's truly a shift in the cost. While there will be more people in the development room, more people discussing how the development and the planning will happen, those costs are always incurred post-permit or when we engage those people anyway, so now we get to incorporate those, so it actually may cost a little more during the development, but that is not additive cost. We specifically select on qualifications as opposed to bid. While we low bid some commodity work, we do not bid the general contractor, the main contractors, the architects. We solicit commercial criteria, but we do not base our decisions on those. We basically base our decisions on ability to innovate and ability to be a team member and ability to work together in a collaborative manner. The three primary philosophies of Lean are the same across all industries: to drive customer value, eliminate waste, and to be continuously improving. Now, in the construction industry, we use a Lean operating system, most specifically the last planner system, target value design, and a whole host of tools that I'm really not prepared to discuss in this short period of time. but also strong relational collaborative work. We talk about being collaborative individuals, but we really are not. We really collaborate within our own companies potentially, but we don't really collaborate with our internal customers very well. A lot of training around that is necessary in order to improve the process. And then there are a set of commercial terms, risk, reward, that support that collaboration and support the movement of scope and responsibilities across traditional siloed responsible. So here are a few of the tools that we have used very successfully. Hopefully you are familiar with some of these, if not all of them. If not, I believe there are other sessions during this meeting, as well as much research and paperwork that you can find to help understand what these practices are. We have found that while none of these things individually are overly complicated, as you attempt to bring these many new tools to a project, it tends to become overwhelming early in the learning phases. And in order to drive the most value, you want to take advantage of as many of these as possible. I might suggest if you're on your first project, you may not get to all of these. Some of these take a deeper study and a deeper understanding than others. But I would strongly urge you to try as many of these as you feel comfortable trying. Oftentimes they build upon each other, so you may tackle 3 of them at first and then start picking them up as your project progresses. The real key to an integrated project, though, is the relationships. The relationships need to be different than they are in a traditional delivery model. All relationships are based in trust. Trust is really all about integrity, intent, capability, and results. There is an excellent book. Stephen M.R. Covey writes a book called The Speed of Trust that shows basically that based upon these 4 tenets of trust, there are actually 13 practices that you can use to drive trust into a partnership or organization in a more rapid manner. The more rapidly you can develop trust, the more improvement you can drive into your program. Frank and candid discussions are not all that often had. We tend to not want to be in an adversarial relationship, so we feign agreement, but then work in our silo in what is our best interest, as opposed to having the candid discussions about what we truly want to accomplish. An interesting thing that I've learned over the 100 projects that I've developed, in fact wrote a paper that I will present on Thursday, is most importantly, this process demands a new kind of leadership, where we might traditionally look to the architect or the architect's firm to lead during the development process, and then sort of that leadership shifts to the general contractor or the construction manager during the build process. We have found that this really is best served with a team of leaders that share those responsibilities throughout the entirety of the development. So it is more of a networked leadership process than a hierarchical leadership process, which demands a lot more people skills, a lot more organizational development skills, as opposed to many of the tactical skills that the traditional project managers are schooled in. Budget management, legal responsibility, scheduling, etc. Individual talents, we are not all talented the same. In fact, no 2 of us are talented the same. And so if we as leadership understand that and try to learn that about each other, we can assign roles that more better suited to our personal skill sets. In order to do that, though, the leadership needs to understand that and needs to understand how to do that. There are a number of tools that you can use to decipher specific skill sets. I might even argue that many of you don't even know what your best skills are. So if you take some of these tools and use them, you can learn why you think and behave in certain ways. And if the project managers leading the team understand that, and you're using a collaborative, integrated form of agreement, you can shift responsibilities based on those skill sets, where people then will be far more productive. consensus versus command and control from those of us with gray hair who have been doing this for many years. We're used to, specifically the owner is used to being in charge and saying, I want, I demand, which then turns to the architect that says, I'm in charge of this and I demand. And the general contractor or construction manager, same thing with his downline, I am in control, we will do things my way, which are rarely the best for the team as a whole. Engaging the last planners is something that's not just unique to us as leadership, but it's also unique to those last planners, to actually have the last planners, most commonly known as the foreman or superintendent out in the field, but also the drafters and the designers, aren't oftentimes asked for their opinions on best practices and things. However, that's where the majority of the work is being done, and that is where the small innovations that we want to see, we're not expecting huge innovation every day, but the small innovations that add to the large benefit and the large innovations happen at the hands of the last planners. So we need to empower them, and that takes, again, a different kind of leadership because they are not used to being empowered in that way. So you will face skepticism and any number of things when you ask for this input. They are not used to being solicited. Continuous improvement, again, is something that we think we all want to get better each day. We want to learn a little bit more. But if we actually use some tools to measure how we're performing and are we improving and how best to affect that improvement, one of the key elements around continuous improvement is failure. While that may sound contradictory, if we're not trying new things because we're afraid of failure, we're not going to improve. So we want to create an environment that allows that failure, albeit managed and in small batches. We don't want people to hide from their failures. We want to talk about our failures so that we can all learn from our failures. And reflection and retrospective review is absolutely critical, and it needs to be honest. It needs to have those frank conversations. In order for that to happen appropriately, the trust needs to be built and improved upon so that we all can talk and learn from each other so that our processes get better on a daily basis. The commercial terms, as I spoke about, are the integrated form of agreement. There's many numbers of those. There are some very standard. The American Institute of Architecture has one. The Association of General Contractors has one that is fairly widely used. There are privately developed programs with attorneys. There are alliancing contracts in other parts of the world. But the basis of that contract is it's a relational contract as opposed to a transactional contract. Talks about how we will behave as a team as opposed to you will deliver this set of drawings for this amount of money. The overall intent is to seek out the lowest cost yet best qualified provider for any and all services and have the willingness to trade that work without, as well as aggregating the risk and sharing the rewards as a team so that it's not one man against another, but all against the goals of one team. Best value selection, meaning we don't solicit pricing and make our decisions based on pricing, but on other qualitative qualities that we want to bring to the team to help. And so as you form a team, the kind of individual or the kind of partner that you want may change because of the skill sets that you've already selected, where price then becomes very much secondary. A design-build program can be similar to an integrated form, except usually the owner is not as heavily involved in design-build process. Design assist, we bring the trade partners to help with the design. Many of them have design capabilities in-house to help put programs together. You can also apply these tools in any of these types of commercial relationships, although you're not going to wring the maximum amount of value from each of these different kinds. Now, as public owners, some of you are public owners or representing the public sector, you may not be able to use an integrated form of agreement, but hopefully one of these types of agreements you can use. You could then perhaps use any of the tools that I showed in an earlier slide. If you can then build the relationships, albeit not contractually, you can benefit significantly from building trust. I think 15 years ago, when I did much lump sum type work, the best projects still ended up because of the relationships on the project. So if you can create a relationship, regardless of the contract terms, it is worth spending the energy there, because that is where you are going to drive value. Strong advocate for, you do not need an integrated form of agreement to deliver a lean integrated project. The higher you go sort of on this partnership delivery hierarchy, I believe the more value you're going to get from a project. Leadership is the key, though. Regardless of the contract form, change is hard work. You're going to hear that, I think you will hear that a number of times looking at the titles of the papers that are going to be presented at this workshop, that leadership is the key. I'm a firm believer in that. We have to change the way people think and the way people respond to these, and the only way to do that is through leadership. We must establish and grow trust. Our industries are completely against that. We must change people's mindsets, that trust is okay, but it's hard work. We must start with the why. Why are we doing this? And the why may change depending on the constituency that you are speaking to. So the craftsman in the field, the why to the craftsman in the field, for us mostly has been about safety. And while we want to improve the productivity, that is not merely for the financial benefit of the productivity. It is equally, if not more so important, for the well-being of the tradesmen in the field. They want to come to work and be prepared and be productive, and so if we have better logistics plans and better scheduling plans, they can actually get a little more work done and go home feeling more productive at the end of the day, and so it is more beneficial for those crafts to do that. If you're going to start this, please select some enthusiastic individuals. This change is hard work. You need the enthusiasm to keep that momentum moving, but you must also then empower them. I started with one, albeit a large project, a $100 million project. You can start with a few projects. What I hope to do with Disney is we have a couple of large projects under contract. We are now taking a few smaller projects. Small projects, while you don't have the overhead cost or the time to do a deep learning, you have rapid learning and rapid turnover, and you can see the entire process in a much shorter time period. So both are the right answer. Short duration, smaller projects, large projects that have a deeper learning. Don't criticize failure, again, very critical. Celebrate the small victories along the way. As you work hard, it's good to feel some accomplishment. You feel very frustrated as you learn and try to implement new techniques and skills. It's good to celebrate the small victories. And it's absolutely critical to commit to be a learning organization. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
You said you started off in the healthcare sector.
Yes.
Now you're working for Disney, so what kind of projects are you working on now?
Well, Disney has a wide variety of projects, from cruise ships to hotels to themed attractions, roller coasters, and other interesting venues, theaters, etc. So that's about 6 months into my learning there. A completely different world from healthcare. While there are many similarities, there are also many dissimilarities. Disney product is very customer friendly and very guest focused. So quality and aesthetics are critical, whereas in healthcare, patient safety is far more important than, while we care about the aesthetics and the cleanliness of the environment, the patient safety and the life safety of the individuals in the building take priority over some of those things. So even from an investment perspective, you can't have everything, so you must make those kinds of decisions. So Disney has a very high creative content, So they have a very individualistic style, so the collaboration and the teamwork is much, much more challenging. Disney also does a preponderance of the design work in-house. They have a very large internal design group, so it makes for some interesting challenges in the integrated forms of agreement, as they almost feel like two of the three major partners. So much learning to come. Yes, ma'am.
May I ask that you all use the microphone just for the streaming service?
I'm from Indonesia, Ministry of Public Works. I would like to know what is how the government regulation to implement this lean construction in Norwegia. Is there any formal regulation, laws, some kind of that? Because I see that it is the implementation is based on our awareness to improve the sustainability of the construction.
We have found that public entities, as well as permitting authorities or governmental authorities, are behind the curve in making these changes. Although they are all very receptive to the concepts, they all want to participate. They've almost to an individual are receptive to earlier discussions in the planning process and being more involved, which we as owners and builders really do appreciate, even if they cannot get formally involved in the relationships. I have not found where they have been able to formally engage in the integration process, although we have convinced the authorities that it is in their best interest as well. From a plan review process, if we review stepwise as opposed to deliver you a batch of work and expect you to do it, we deliver in small batches and have more of a collaborative over-the-shoulder review process, and have found that to be very, very successful. So when they are willing to engage, it benefits all parties.
More questions?
I'm always very interested in target value design. I know Glenn has given us presentations in the past. Could you explain a bit more how you've implemented target value design?
We, in my healthcare practice, I feel we have been very successful in target value design. As mentioned earlier, I represented a company that owned 240 hospitals across the entirety of the United States. While no two hospitals are the same, many of the functions of the hospitals are the same. And so we have a good database of cost, so we can make a business decision. We know what our revenue streams are in various locations. We have a very relatively good understanding of what costs should be or what we want them to be. And so we can set a target and make that our business decision maker. If the team can deliver to that target, we then move ahead with the project. And so we have done that very successfully. We also have done a number of our hospitals were psychiatric, mental health hospitals, where we built small additions, 20 beds, 40 beds, 60 beds. We had a nice module, and we saw the costs go down approximately 30% over a period of time, because we would challenge each new project with a slightly lower cost delivered model, geographically adjusted, etc., but had been very successful at challenging the teams to drive to certain costs. We do not line item protect, saying the electric must cost this much or the mechanic must cost that. As long as the total program can be delivered for that target, we have seen much success in trade-offs and value decision-making capabilities because of that. I'd rather spend money on the roof or the chiller than spend money on the flooring or the walls, so we could make those kinds of decisions with real-time cost data, which was very, very successful.
I think the real strength of it is very stretched targets and taking your cost base but stretching it even further. And the team then comes together to produce a very good outcome.
Yes, and my only regret is I never stretched quite enough, because we reached all of those targets. Time and time again, we would reach the targets, even though going in they looked like a big, hairy, audacious goal. Yes, we were successful at reaching all those targets.
Yeah, we find the target setting process is difficult. It's almost a negotiation.
It is, it is. And at Disney, it's a bit more complicated because so much of what they do is unique and invention. As opposed to innovation, it's invention, where they're building the new, the very first, and it's hard to predict what that cost is going to be. It's hard to convince others what that cost is going to be, even with some historic data.
One brief question from my side. Shavin Akshano from Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, Germany. You mentioned, or you characterized the projects you did. You said some were full integrated project deliveries and some were not. Can you explain what is the criteria when you would classify a project as a full IPD, or what has to be there that you classify it that way, or vice versa?
Sure. So I believe there are three pieces to the delivery process. So there's the operating system. So last planner and the list of tools that I show are part of the operating system. Those tools can be implemented on any type of project. So choosing by advantages. Last planner system is a planning system used in the field, although we've also used it in the design phase. The contract has no bearing on how or what you do with those tools. That becomes a decision for whomever is in charge of picking the tools that are going to be implemented on the project. The next is about the relationships. The relationships are, how are we going to treat each other? How do we share information? How do we collaborate? Again, it's a deeper level because it's about the individuals and how they're going to behave, and individuals oftentimes behave based on the contractual relationship because they must protect their own turf, silo. So if we can break down those silos, you don't have to have a contract to break down the silos. It's about the individuals and the trade-offs and the relationships. So you can implement tools without a contract. You can have relationships without a contract. You can have the relationships without implementing the tools. And then the last piece is the commercial terms, the contract. And if the commercial terms wrap all of those things together, saying you will use these tools, you will affect these relationships, and the contract is then aligned so that we all win together or we all lose together. So all profits are tied together and all risk is shared equally. That, to me, is a complete integrated lean project delivery. But if you can pick and choose the pieces, I would never pick the contract without the other two pieces. That would be a huge mistake. And people have done that because they ask for lean construction, not really understanding what that is, and have walked into that and probably have not succeeded very well. But if you apply the things in that order, tools are probably the easiest to apply regardless of contract terms. Relationships are about the people. And so if you have no control over the person on the job, you may not be able to affect the relationships as well. And then again, the contract, the integrated form, ties all the processes together. So that is a full integrated lean project to me, in my opinion.
I think we have time for one more question. Just hold on a second.
I'm Jose from Chile, and I would like to know, how do you create value from the client perspective at the beginning of the project, the design stage? How do you manage value and target value design together?
Well, so the easiest way is to understand. So most owners, I find, have an understanding of the cost, certainly that they're willing to pay. The business decision says, if you're in the business of building government buildings, what's the very first thing you're asked? What is this going to cost me? So that, in essence, is a soft target. We know what the investment threshold is. And from that, you may say, 50% waste. We must do better. You could take a commonly understood cost estimate and say, we insist on this being 10% better. It must be 10% better. Or 20. Pick a number. You set that target. That's not necessarily, you will not bind the partners to a contract at that stage. You will work hard, set that as a target, and then sometime into the development, when the project is defined well enough, you will negotiate and agree that that is the target. You will have a clear understanding. So when you make partnership selections, you ask them for profit numbers, profit percentages, so that you get a firm understanding of their needs from a commercial term basis, and set that aside until you come to the final agreement of what that target value is. We have traditionally set that target around permit phase, about the time that the drawings are ready to go to permit. Why? Because the scope is very well defined then, the cost should be very well known. There will still be risks, as there always are, but we can identify what those potential risks are and make some prudent business decisions about how to manage those risks. At that point, we have what I believe to be a very fair commercial process where we can all come to an agreement on what that target should be, and how we're going to measure success against that target. I held in all of my meetings, I will not twist your arm behind your back to force you into some risk you're not comfortable with, and that does take a fair amount of negotiation oftentimes. But if you just design and draw and wait and bid, the price is what the price is. If you start at the beginning with the target in mind based on your business needs, and then subtract some amount from that, expecting us to do better. We want to reward innovation, so we drive that down and then at some point reward innovation beyond, for further savings beyond that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Will? Very gift of appreciation.
Thank you.
Right. Our next presenter is director at Sutter Health. Like Steve, he is also a leading figure in the lean construction community. He's in charge of major development projects in the hospital sector using IPD and lean. He is regarded a prominent project manager, having received a number of recognitions for his lean IPD efforts, and his projects have been featured in numerous publications. Please give a hand of applause to Digby Christian.
Hey, good morning.
Yep. Do you prefer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just click it on to the shirt now.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that on? Can you hear me okay? Is it on? Not on? No. I can't tell.
Nope.
Nope. Oh,
Let me-
there we go.
Is that better?
Is that on? Am I on? Can you hear me now? All right. Okay. Firstly, I'm going to apologize to anyone who was at my presentation in Berkeley about a month ago. You'll recognize perhaps all of these slides. But
Sorry,
I...
you won't get it. Just-
Huh?
Sorry, you won't get the duplicate there. Just here.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Good.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to use an example of the project I ran in California, but I'm not really attempting to teach you how to build a hospital. What I'm trying to focus on is this idea of project delivery is really a matter of managing risk. So what I'm going to talk about here is like using lean thinking to take the risk out of high-risk endeavors. And this was a high-risk endeavor because all hospitals are typically risky because they're highly complicated. In California, they have the extra challenge of it being an earthquake zone. So I just hit the down button. Page down. Page up.
Just take a few seconds.
Okay.
There you go, and then you can use this one.
Oh,
here.
okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go through these as sharply as I can. So I'm going to talk about the project, this thing I called the dragon of uncertainty. There are some inconvenient truths about project delivery, kind of the strategies we used on the project to make it successful and the outcomes. Now, I'm using exactly the same way of thinking on the project I'm currently running in San Francisco, so don't think for a moment that this is like a one-off that was done a couple of years ago and Sutter isn't continuing to do this. We are. So basically, for those of you who don't know, it's basically in California, a medium-sized hospital with those many beds. It's about that large, that project value. And that's what it looked like probably a year before we even really started design. This was like part of the pitch to the county to get approval. So the challenges on this project were that we were using a brand new contract model at the time, which is now our standard contract model, which is like Bill has used on his projects, the integrated form of agreement. We had to put a brand new clinical care model in this building, which Sutter hadn't done before. Well, in order to make budget, we had to finish 30% faster than hospitals typically take in California. This was during the financial collapse, the world market financial collapse. So for once, Sutter literally had a literal cap on funding for this project. So there was a lot of stress. We had a huge fine we were going to face legally with the county if we didn't didn't get the project finished on time as well. So that was fun. That we were going to have to pay them $200 million if we didn't finish on time. So, you know, there's a lot of energy behind this project. It had to be LEED Silver. It was a very constrained site, and it happened to be in the most severe seismic zone in California. So, and those red lines on this diagram, does it show up okay up there? It's like, those red lines are all the earthquake faults in the Bay Area of California, and the project is about a quarter of a mile from the one that's most likely to fail in the next 20 years. So typically, it's like a typical project, it's high risk, and the stakeholders have a lot to lose, which is typical for any major complex project in any industry. And I'm very keen to stress on what I'm trying to highlight is these are all lessons that are applicable to any project in any industry, in any regulatory environment. So our project challenge was essentially preserve the scope, be on budget, be on time. Value one, preserve the scope. That's the typical thing that goes away on these large projects. And you typically can't get all three of them, and we were challenged to try and get all three, and I think that you can. To connect this to I'm going to present a paper on Thursday like Bill, but there's some terms I'm using in that paper. So essentially we're trying to define the value of the project. Why are we trying to build this project? And then there are some, the typical performance of complex projects is the scope gets compromised, the budget gets exceeded, and the schedule gets exceeded. And this has become typical for hospital projects in California. So the dragon of uncertainty. I drew this a few years ago. So some of you have seen this before, but like, it's a dragon because it's your enemy, classical enemy of us. It has a question mark on its chest to remind you that it's the dragon of uncertainty, not any other kind of dragon. And that's the dragon you really need to fight, otherwise known the dragon of risk. And it's standing on a clock, which is your schedule, and a bag of money, which is your budget. And on the left, it's value engineering your project, which is what typically happens on projects. In order to fake being on time and on budget, we value engineer the project so that we don't get what we wanted to get when we thought we were going to do the project. There are some inconvenient truths about projects. Namely that actually if you talk to enough people involved in a project, all of the risks are already known amongst that, but typically they're not known at the leadership level. And so strategies are not implemented to manage those risks. Work is typically done in silos with minimal cross-collaboration. But within each of those silos, everybody's actually typically doing a very good job of managing their risks. And what are often perceived as dysfunctional, unhelpful behaviors are simply people managing their risks in their silo. And then, which is what the point I'm making in item 3. And in item 4, so budget is typically not used as a parameter of design. It's something that you find out later when design is close to completion, and usually what you find out is you can't afford it. And so, because budget hasn't repeatedly been used as a parameter during the design phase in general, and typically design is completed during implementation, especially on complicated projects. The design is not completed during the design phase. It's completed when you're building it. And none of that makes any sense, but it is what happens. The industry suffers from a large-scale form of cognitive dissonance, where it has, here's what we want to do, and then we have processes that are never going to deliver that, but we do them anyway. And then we don't get what we want, and then we get mad about it, which is ridiculous, right? But I think a lot of it's to do with the siloed nature of the business and good people managing their own risks. So we basically designed strategies on this project to address all of those typical truths in a project. And I just go very quickly through this. This is just talking about doors, frames, and hardware. If you sit down with the people who actually buy doors, frames, and hardware, design them, connect them to other systems, install them, you will find out that if you have more than about 100 doors in a project, typically anything that could go wrong will go wrong. So if you talk to the people who do it, you will learn that there's a huge problem with doors, frames, and hardware. But there are no strategies to deal with it because they all sit in their own silo, dealing with their own risks. So these are a list of all the things that can go wrong, which are to do with budget, time, integration, quantity, finish. Something will go wrong. And then this was another example where there were a lot of problems with software, and this was a group people flew to the software developer to try and see if, for once, could the trade mechanical installers work with the same software as the design mechanical designers? And the answer was yes, they could. You don't need to use two different pieces of software. You could use the same software, and therefore there would be no handover between design and trade, which is what you want, right? But it's typically not what happens because everyone's in their own silo managing their own risks, and typically design software is sold to design professionals to solve designers' problems. They're not sold to owners to solve owners' problems. So we decided a 24/7 collaborative environment. This is a diagram that sort of summarizes the contract that Bill was kind of talking about, where we had a multiple number of different major risk managers, in my mind, all signing the same contract. So what you're trying to do is make everybody want to achieve the same thing, rather than managing their own risks in their own silo, or live in a big silo with the same risks. And they were rewarded for doing it well and sort of financially punished, I suppose, for not doing it so well. Physically, we created a collaborative environment. This is the design phase. We released the space. Everybody was not co-located literally, but it was a co-location resource. And we were, on this screen here, you have a plan view of the model on the left, and you have the BIM model on the right, and we're just talking about problems, clashes, coordination issues. And then when we're in construction, we just built one large trailer with everybody in it. And there's a tremendous benefit from not having people being in their own trailers. Even in a big room like this, you can get breakdowns because people still don't get up and walk like 15 feet to talk to the person they need to talk to. So it doesn't all just happen, but this is a huge step forward from having to have somebody exit a trailer, walk across a compound and enter a trailer and ask the question. We created a software environment where everybody lives in the same file structure. This is not a buzzsaw like where you upload your files. This is where your files actually live. This is where you go get your files, where you modify your files, and where you put your files back, so that everybody has access to the latest information all the time. And that's the geographic separation of the project. So we designed the design process because obviously this is not even a thing that's typically done. You just designers, no design, right? So you get the designers to do the design, and you have trade people just answer questions. But actually it breaks down a lot. So this diagram was simply a bunch of people spending about 5 hours talking to each other about how to do floors, plans, and elevations on a project, and what order would you do them in to minimize the risk of rework, right? And actually what I found out was no one knows. No one knows. And that's why it took so long to draw what is actually a very simple diagram. You would have thought maybe an architect would go up to a whiteboard and say, well, just need to do it like this, and then you would just refine it. But actually you have people just staring at each other blankly, going, well, I don't know, And so, and this is really a conceptual diagram. You can't really do much with this except at least expose that we don't know how to do this. But once you get these kind of structural conversations together, in terms of structure of the order of the work, you can then take it a little bit further. You can do it in more detail. This is the classic way, which I still recommend, post-its on a whiteboard, talk to each other in more detail about the handoffs between different people. And then on a complex project, you can put it in software. And then so the software can keep track of the changing relationships on the project, because but what I like, this represents the reality of actually getting through design and then later through construction. It is a very complicated network of commitments, and if you don't represent that actual complicated network of commitments, you can't know if you're going to be on time. Gantt charts don't help. They help for conceptual planning. You can figure out it's going to take 5 years to design and build a hospital, but can you tell that you're going to hit a milestone that's 3 months away? No, in my opinion, you can't, because it's only till you get to the last 4 weeks that you realize you're late. So you really need a network of actual commitments that people are actually going to execute against to really drive reliability into schedule planning. And this is basically the team every week on this project will get together and view the commitments. Time flows downwards on this diagram. At the very top is everything that says this work is released. And you have everybody check the top row to say, is it actually released? Can you actually do this work? And if you can't, write a post-it and tell everyone else what you need in order to do the work. And do you agree that these pathways down to the major milestones, which are at the bottom of that diagram, do we have a reliable pathway? So you get the team to work to each other. In my mind, this is what drives the culture. And if you don't get the right culture on a project, as Bill said, everything's at risk. So I find getting people to think about work planning is the heart of driving a different culture on a project. And you can take this thinking to any project. You really can. So I think it's a very key item. And then we use budget as a key format of parameter design. This is during the design phase. Typically, a general contractor will give an owner maybe a 50 to 100 page report every month, which I, as an owner, don't read because I don't have time and I don't understand it. So we got together as a team. What did we as a team need to see in order to know whether we're on time or not? And it doesn't matter what format it takes. What matters is that it's built together and it solves a problem that you need to solve. And so this was used. We basically re-estimated the project every 2 weeks, which doesn't mean you literally re-estimated the whole project every 2 weeks, but you had everybody continually re-estimating what was available to re-estimate and really statusing the estimate every 2 weeks. And then we had things like this. We have a similar thing to this up in the collaboration space on the large project I'm running in San Francisco right now, which basically tells everybody how well the contract is going financially. So it keeps everybody in mind that there's a problem to solve. Like this is reminding everybody that if you really want your companies to maximize the profit, we've got to get another $2 million out of this project. At the very best end, you have companies who can tie a database to the model. On this project, they were able to reliably reprice the concrete and the framing and the drywall just by clicking on objects in the model. But it doesn't really matter if a team can't do that. You just, whatever method they use, expose the method that they use and get them to do it over and over, which is not what anyone is usually used to doing. They're typically set up to maybe price a job maybe at maximum 3 times during the design phase. They're not set up to continually re-estimate. And they usually all have to change the way they do it because typically it takes a group of experts to sit through hundreds of drawings and it takes weeks to do one estimate. When you're saying, I need an estimate every 2 weeks, it means they have to come up with a way of doing it in a day or a few days, and you can't do that using traditional estimating methodologies. And then this is the key. Commit to modeling for fabrication and to building the model, which idea is that you're going to design to the fabrication level during the design phase. You're not going to do that in the construction phase. You're going to do it during design. And then you're going to build that design. No more design intent going into the field, just actual design completed. And this is a sort of diagrammatic idea of it with mechanical. You start with a model on one side, you extract what you need to gain a permit, but then you keep going to the install level. Permit drawings are just an extraction. You do not want to build from the permit drawings in this kind of thinking. you want to build from what you call installation drawings. And then you literally, if you can, you literally want to fabricate the physical objects from the actual installation drawings, which is what we did with sheet metal on this project. So the actual objects are shipped to site on the back of a truck, based from a plasma cutter talking to a design model drawing. It's very complicated. It's very complicated, very tight. Get everyone to look at everything at the same time. By making it visual, which is a key method of lean, you're just making people deal with the fact, no, this is a really tight tolerance project. And if you don't literally show it, I find everybody talks their way around that issue. Like in this model earlier, some of the railings were grazing the concrete shear wall by 1/4 inch. Well, you can talk your way around it, but you can't talk around it when you actually see the railing going into the shear wall for like 50 feet of the descent, and you say, well, are you going to build it like that? Like, well, because the shear wall is going to be up when we try and drop this stair into the building. So do you want to pay to fix that then, or shall we spend 3 hours fixing it now, right? And then it becomes a more, oh, well, yeah, we'll probably spend 3 hours right now. 3 minutes, right. This is get actual fixtures in your models, not library fixtures, because everything is wrong about the library fixture for the toilet. And nothing that you need to know is in it, and everything that you don't need to know is in it. So, like, how does it connect to the sanitary sewer system? Well, the library model doesn't tell you. So, but if you can get the actual fixture, you can do that. And if you can then attach a connector to the sewer to the object, you automatically pick up all the clashes with the beams in the building, because you took a little 6-inch stub and attached it to the bottom of every fixture yourself and placed that object in the model. All of the clashes with the steel will then show up. None of those will show up if you don't do that. It's just that, there's a detailed thinking. In the model, looking at the model, planning it, this is like the actual building, the actual model are very similar. This is like if you compare, that's what actually got hung in the building, that's the model it came from, it's fabricated from this model, literally with plasma cutters and shipped to site. This is then we scan the building after the fact to check that what we built actually aligned with the model. The dots is the scan, which is still checking that the pipes that are coming in 6 months are going to go through the holes that are really there right now. And then we basically nailed the scope. It came in slightly under budget. Typical in California, they come in over budget. Opened like 6 weeks early, a month early. Rework dropped massively, and that really does drive morale in the field. We had 5,000 inspections to pass, and we passed 96% of them first time. So all of those strategies work. So why is this lean thinking? It aligns your processes with what the stakeholders consider to be valuable. You use the people who do the work to improve the processes, and you use extensive use of visual control on the project. And visual control is extremely important. So that's it. That's what I wanted to cover.
Any questions?
No? That's my own timer.
The Norwegian timer is faster.
I've got one or two questions. We've been dealing a lot with Dan Jones in the UK, Change the World, essentially,
Right.
coach and mentor.
Yeah.
And he's been working for the last number of years in the health service in the UK, and he's got a very clear picture of the difficulties in the health service,
Right.
particularly patient experience and patient flow within the design of the hospital. First question is, how did you deal with that in terms of the design with the customer experience and to make it a good one? And secondly, what's your whole life costing, your whole life view of the facility? The danger of every construction, including hospitals, is that the operation might be a success but the patient dies.
Right.
Otherwise, the long-term effect isn't so good.
Yeah.
So 2 questions.
Okay. So yeah, I agree that, so on this project, Sutter moved to very much what they call patient-centered care, where the care comes to the patient rather than the patient moving to the care in the building. So there was studies based on, they modeled how far all of the staff would have to travel for the different kinds of care environments and how far would the patient have to travel. So that whole effort of minimizing patient movement through the building is part of what's in that building. So it was studied extensively. So that was like, but what we didn't do, I think of projects in 4 phases right now. There's value definition, there's representation, there's realization, and there's value capture. I would say that at Sutter, we still don't do a rigorous a comparison of value capture to value, the defined value to the captured value, and specifically about life cycle costs. Never once during that project, or even on the project am I now, do I have any life cycle targets within my control. I'm in charge of like, this is what building you want, scope-wise, budget-wise, deadline-wise. I will give you that. But I'm not tasked with managing that team to deliver a certain kind of annual budget for electricity, certain kind of staffing costs. That's kind of like floats outside, and I think that it would be much better if they were, and it's just not a process right now. And so, and we don't do a rigorous like walk through the building. We don't. I'm not in my group. I don't analyze the data from the last hospital we built to see how any of that's going. I wish that they were. I think it's a key part of overall project success is that you have a very good value definition phase, all of the important values, which should include, especially if you're an owner operator, the life cycle cost of the building. So. So I agree that it should be done where we are right now. Maybe it's coming, but it's not there yet. But at least in the narrow definition of value, which is, I want this by this date for this money, and with these other like sustainability criteria, we do that and we track against that, we manage against that. But the big items of long-term value, we don't, but we should.
Sometimes the ratios are maybe 50 to 1.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yes. Right.
Give you reassurance that it's a similar problem elsewhere. So
right. Yes.
Yes. People waking up.
Right. Absolutely. Yes.
Very good.
Good.
More questions?
Okay.
I have one.
Yes.
You were talking about culture, and some have said that within a short period of time of any particular project, a culture is set,
yes.
is established. And what do you reckon is the X factor that separate a project with a good culture from the start, from a not so good project? What does it take?
I think it's the key element of it is leadership. You need a really strong, engaged owner. And you need, as Bill was saying, you need enthusiastic leaders throughout, a set of enthusiastic, energized people throughout your team. If you can't get the culture ingrained, you're at risk of not really achieving any of this, because most of the people on your project typically don't work most of their time in this environment. They are typically behaviorally oriented to traditional environments for managing their own risk, and they'll bring that behavior even into an environment where that behavior doesn't make any sense anymore. I find that a limited number of people can like reason through an environment and logically change the behavior. Most people just go with the behavior they've learned, right? It's based on experience. They'll refuse to release drawings because they've learned that that's dangerous, because then people, the design's not finished yet, the design's not finished yet, the design's not finished yet. Or on the trade side is, don't give it to me till it's done, don't give it to me till it's done, don't give it to me till it's done, right? And you want both sides to change. You want the designers to kick it out the door as soon as they've got something finished so they can get input. You want the trades to dive in there as soon as something's available for their input. And both sides historically don't do that anymore. They've not done that for the last 20, 30 years. So you're trying to change that in one lump. So you need a strong leadership to say we're going to change, and you need to identify the key players who seem to be oriented to that kind of environment and empower them. And the flip side is, there's this phrase, you've got to change the people or change the people. So if you find people in key positions of influence who don't get it. You should try to give them the opportunity to get it, but if they don't get it, you must remove them from the project. I'm seeing that tradition. You've got to be a bit traditional on this, and I have, on my part, removed 2 key players from that project. I've already moved 2 key players from the current project because not because they're bad people, it's just their orientation's not appropriate. And they're in positions of such behavioral influence that everyone watches them and mimics their behavior, right? And you can't have those people in your project. And I would say you particularly, I think right now, need a good general contractor project manager. If you have a good owner rep and you have a good general contractor, project executive, or project manager, that's the strongest access. And then you need a strong architect, you need other strong people, but if you don't have that access, all of a sudden successful projects have had that very strong access. We've had one unsuccessful project where we didn't have that access. So, you know, culture is key, and coming up on the academic conference, the stream I'm most interested in is the one that's about people and culture, because that's to me the most tricky, fascinating area of this. So.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Okay.
Yep, there's one more question up there.
As an alternative,
Just hold on a second and we'll get the mic to you.
As an alternative, if you've done the complete design in detail in advance, using a consultant who's an expert also in constructional aspects, and then you went to bid with the detailed drawings, available at the upfront, could the same results have been achieved in terms of time and cost?
Unless you got trade involvement in those design drawings, they're probably not worth anything. They're not really finished. I will guarantee you that unless you got trade involvement in those design drawings, they are not finished. And you will be in the traditional environment of finishing those design drawings during construction, and you will get buried in change orders.
I would add to that, it's the knowledge transfer during the design phase, right? That helps the process much better out in the field. Yeah. And so when the trades help design, they know how to build what they're building, and so that's where you drive the significant results in the field.
Right. And what you want a designer who will stand their ground against the trades, and you want a trade rep who would stand his ground against the designer, and you want what we call constructive conflict. I don't want a designer to compromise their vision for the look and feel of the space simply because the trades want to drop the ceiling 1.5 feet because it'll be much easier. I want that designer to fight for that ceiling height, but I want the trades to fight for the budget, for instance. Right, and then together we'll work out how to make this happen. And it happened all the way through that hospital building by actually moving like ductwork to the side, and you'll just see like a 6-inch soffit in the corner that you'll barely notice. But we got the 10-foot ceilings all the way down the corridors, right? Simply because the designer would not give on, because it was a very narrow corridor. And he knew he needed to have at least 9.5-foot ceiling in order to create a feeling of space, even though it's actually not there. But you had a trade rep that said, like, it's impossible to build if you insist on this everywhere, right? And so you want that. So it's like a really informed discussion. You're looking for people who know how to fight for what's important, but know how to give on what's not. And that can be tough to get that. But I'm just saying that, like, you have, with the complex project, you've got to get trade involvement in the design. And typically I like to get the trade involvement from the trades to really build it rather than trade consultants who can also just walk away and, sorry, I guess I didn't know as much as you thought I knew. So.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
All right.
Tibi.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Right, so let's move on to the third speaker this morning. Now we will hear from a Norwegian presenter who is employed by Skanska, which is a world-leading project development and construction group. The presenter is currently working on several research projects focusing on the use of BIM and Lean. In addition to a PhD in design management, he is an experienced consultant in civil engineering, project management, project development, and as a manager for the Skanska BIM section. Here today, he is going to talk about, among other things, design meeting efficiency. Please welcome Kai Håkon Christensen.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Yes. Very good. This one works as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I just need a glass of water. Okay. Design meeting efficiency to improve process, project, and quality. Starting by talking about my experience, jumping into approximately 2002 when I entered Skanska. In Skanska, I've been working been there for 12 years now, and mainly working in the early phases of the building projects. Working with project management, development, being an estimator for a time, and primarily as a design manager. I've been struggling with implementing the use of BIM and increasing the efficiency of the design process by taking advantage of some lean tools. And I've been struggling with it. Combined with struggling with implementing these tools, with my curiosity, I finally got the opportunity to take a PhD. So in last year and 4 days ago, I defended my thesis called Building Design Management. And I've been working as a project manager or a member of various R&D projects as of now. But the thesis which I defended had the basis of it was that I think we need to understand the traditional projects or our inherited ways of working before we could easily implement these elements of lean or, for instance, BIM. So the observations I did in my PhD was in traditional projects. So one of the initiatives which I followed was looking at planning, scheduling, and control. How is this really working? And while working on that, I started to observe the behavior in the meetings. And how did the design manager actually manage the design meetings? And I found that the link between the ability to facilitate meetings and planning and control has a huge impact on the ability to deliver on time. So I'm going to present these findings now and end up with my suggestion for improving the efficiency. And Digby, I should have held this prior to your presentation, because probably this would repeat something of your presentation. Always nice. So, common observations in design meeting. This is not funny to present. But I guess you will recognize this. Yeah. Ending up in the common perceptions that meetings take too much time. Why is this? I have some favorites in here, but I won't spend time on them. So, looking at the skills of planning, scheduling, design, what is used. And this is, of course, findings in a Norwegian context. So, but I guess it's quite common other places. Of course, every design manager has a relationship to the milestones in various degree of content. And the next tools which is used is bar charts. And of course, this is often combined in a sort of mishmash and growing to the extreme. And there's no way nobody is able to follow this in their daily lives. So what is happening? Well, you're using the most common tool, which is design meetings and meeting minutes. And this is actually the tools which are used during the design process. And how is it used? This is when I sit down. And starting with the meeting minutes. The meeting is set. And this is really boring, because this is the form of the minute. This is the tool which is governing the whole process. And, whoa, cool. I think I'll stand up again. It's quite boring, but it's important to know how this is used. The first administrative information is not interesting. The standard issues is often environmental issues or safety issues, which is often just ignored. And then we're going on to the active matters, and you're starting on the top of the list. And you're working almost the entire meetings on the active matters. And when you feel you're some sort of done, you're asking the participants, is there anything new? And when this is happening, this is where the design manager is going from being a manager to being a secretary, because you're addressing the first person, and the other people are starting to talk. And as a design manager, you have lost control, in my opinion. But the problem is that the order of matters and issues are random. They're sorted into the minute according to the time the issues was introduced. There's low correlation between cases in minutes and master plans. And most dramatically, the cases is a mix of thematic and geographical matters. They are discipline-centered and added with administrative corrections. And the last one here is rather boring, because it's instructions of putting this and that file into the file server, and rather tedious things. But anyhow, the meeting minutes forms the agenda for the meeting. And this is probably not efficient. Or it isn't, I'll show you. And if this is the governing tool of the design process, we are in trouble. So this is not so easy to grasp at the first moment. But I did some analysis of meeting minutes and divided the issues into 5 typologies. The goal in these typologies is type number 4, which is an addressed task with a due date. This is the goal in the meeting minutes. Everything else is noise. So using these type of typologies and performing analysis of meeting minutes, you can see this is one case. And the x-axis is the number of the meetings. And you can see that the yellow bar is the total amount of issues, and you can see it growing. It's growing, it's growing, it's growing. And combining this with the planned reliability, which you can see is highly variable, this is a warning that we have problems. Looking at the issues which weren't done at the appropriate time, and then studying, okay, when is it done? You can see that the delay is quite dramatic. And again, looking at every task and asking for what is the horizon of the task is quite short. But at the same time, the project is confident. Okay, we are in control. We have a meeting minute. We are using it. We're on schedule. We have a plan. There's no actually there's nobody who recognizes that this is processes without control. So looking at the process efficiency, I guess you all have some sort of relation to this kind of figure. This is from Bølvik and Gullbæk and Nyseth in 2010. I think they presented it in Haifa. This is the constrictions around a design task. So what I did in several projects, I was looking at the design task, and if it wasn't performed at the appointed date, I was asking, what was the problem? Why wasn't the task done? Look at mind the gap. It's a point. But you can see that in this project, the main cause why things went down was that it weren't even started yet. And this is a trend which repeats itself in all of my studies. Actually, the no excuse cause is by some people sorted under staff. But I think that comparing being sick or other types of occurrences, it's not that important that compared to that designers and others haven't lifted a finger since yesterday. Basically, they're liars. Because in the current meeting, of course, I'm going to do this to the next meeting. And coming to the next meeting, no, I haven't done it. And you know what, in my observation, what the common reaction on it, what was the consequence of not doing your work? The design manager often says, oh, when is it done? When can you give it to me then? Please. That's not good. Counting in 3 projects, you can see that all tasks which aren't done at the appointed time spans from 25 to 36%. And I would say that's a lot of improvement in those numbers. This is traditional project. There was nothing wrong with them. They delivered some approximately on budget and skilled people. Nobody was raising any alarms because this is normal, yeah, and accepted. And it hasn't. There's no consequences of being in the no excuse corner. And that's sad. Looking at process efficiency from another aspect, by analyzing what was really going on in the meetings, by analyzing each task, in which phase does the task belong into? And this is the meetings which were performed in the detailed design phase. Okay, the contract was set. You should be able to anticipate that the outline and schematic phase was done. But as you can see with the contents there, that the schematic phase is not done. We're working, in this project was quite good. They were working on schematic issues into the half point. And then the yellow bars indicate issues which belong to the detail phase. This is another project. This was a design manager which divided the participants and had some sort of better control. So you can see the top right there with the architect and the structural engineer was where it should have were on target. But the HVAC and electrical designers were struggling, especially in meeting number 5. You can see that they were were not there they thought they were. And this is the bad project. This was a design phase which definitely not ended in the design process. This ended on the site. Of course, there was an excellent site manager which delivered 13 or 14% on the project. But they were really wasting the possibilities in the design process. And okay, he delivered 13%, but how large could it have been? Could have been a lot more. So these 3 slides is an indication that the design managers, they don't have any control of what's going on. They don't recognize that, okay, I am in the detail phase now, but I'm working on schematic or outline issues. There's no culture for recognizing in the detail phase that if you are working with questions like, are we going to have 6 or 7 floors? There's nobody considering drop everything else and figure this out. No, you don't do that. You're addressing 6 or 7 floors in the same scale as, for instance, the color of the seats or some trivial things. So what's going on? Okay. At the last point, there's a lack of breakdown structures in the planning, and the design manager is lacking facilitator skills. So what could we do? This is first to establish a strategy for the design process by combining the strategy of the entire building and dissipating this through down to the last planner, actually. 2, learn to use traditionals and new tools. And I find that a lot of design manager and designers, they don't relate to using these tools. And I think that you have to master these tools prior to using new tools or tools associated with lean construction. So if you think that it's just to implement last planner system or any other tools without having the basic concept of traditional tools, you are in trouble. One of my babies is performance measurement, by accepting that each task has a variance on it and following each interesting topic with a measurement system, you are able to perform better design management. So addressing issues on the strategic, tactical, and operational level will enable you to be a better design manager. By looking at some examples here, at the strategic level, cost, safety, client satisfaction is important. On the tactical level, changes in program, time consumption, etc. So there's a lot of indicators which could be followed. 4th, start thinking about improvement as an important aspect. And this is a strategic frame as a picture of the time frame which is allowed, and introducing a PDAC circle as a point for measurement during the design process. You are able to steer the project. Looking more thoroughly on the Deming wheel here, you do your measurement, you do your planning, you implement the changes in the design meeting. You actually have to control that the designers has understood the changes, and of course you adjust the plans if actually. Then you are steering into a strategic frame, and you have a better chance of reaching your goals. And finally, how do you carry out structured design meetings? And it consists of preparations, planning, and working within the meeting, and of course follow-ups. The preparations and the plannings is the most important things. So first, the facilitating of the room is basic, but all clarified issues and new issues should be reported prior to the meetings. Why do we report it within the meetings when it's done? Or why do new issues have to come up at the end of the meeting when it could be addressed before the meeting? So the design manager are able to configure plans and change the direction of the process. And of course, when you're engaging into the meeting as a design manager, you're standing and you're presenting a predefined agenda. This is what we're going to do today, followed by tracking the progress of the project, who has delivered and who has not, and why haven't you delivered. Of course, when these elements are done, you could let the meeting flow into another kind of working process. But when your priorities are set and the project progress is recognized, you could let the meeting flow into some sort of working meeting. And a follow-up is quite ordinary. The last slide, what about the meeting minute? Of course, the meeting minutes has some relevance, all based on where in the process you are. I think the best way to ensure progress is to use action lists instead of meeting minutes. But of course, if it's important to document a developing discussion, you should use a minute, but not as a tool of ensuring progress. So that was more than 3 minutes, I think.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Karl. Any questions for Kai Håkon? One at a time, please. Yep. Let's start over here.
Well, Kai, you are very clever at describing how awful everything is, but I want to challenge you about the meetings. Why have them? Why don't take it a step further and scrap all those meetings and meeting minutes and work in another way?
Yeah, why not? By increasing the level of collaboration, sitting together, and you are at once reducing the need for meetings, I think. So why do we have meetings? That's because everybody's sitting on different locations and have the need to collaborate. By removing the need to move into a joint room and being in a joint room, I don't think you need the total amount of design meetings. Moving into the daily huddle sort of meeting is probably more efficient. But that's not the culture in Norwegian design offices. But I think some design offices are moving into it by offering combined designer packages.
I think it's on.
Shout.
Oh, there you go. All right, sorry. So I just wanted to state that we don't use, on the projects I run, we have abandoned minutes. We don't use minutes. We only use minutes on an exception basis, typically when we're meeting with a state agency or any kind of agency, because it's very important to write down in a minuted form, because they often can serve as a legal document later. But if we do have meetings, the only things we record formally are the commitments, who is going to get what done by when, so that there can be follow-up, and we try to embed all of those commitments in a workflow in the software so that everyone understands what it's connected to. And it's such a disruptive way of working, it takes a long time to get people used to that, but I would just want to say I support you in everything that, it was a very funny presentation for anyone. Real projects, because it's absolutely true. That's an absolutely accurate representation of what normally happens. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think that, okay, of course it's not that funny to present how bad it is, but I think it's a necessity to understand what is really going on and why do we have to do something else. I find that when I have presented this to the traditionalists, they are sort of like, oh, is it? Okay, now I'm ready to listen to you. So that's quite funny to have this presentation and motivating people for learning Lean, for instance.
One of a couple things we've learned that if you have meetings every other week, that everything takes 2 weeks to get finished.
Yeah.
So everything has a 2-week duration. So we take the log that Digby is speaking of and have that 15-minute check-in call on a much more frequent basis. So you're not meeting, you're not all coming together to meet, and you have to be very disciplined about the 15 minutes so that people will continue to show up. It also then gives you an ability to measure the graphs that you showed, the PPC we use to show the percent plan complete, and it helps everyone grade the process on a much more regular basis so they can see those errors of their ways. That helps us all then improve and put a little peer pressure on each other to improve that as well. I'm curious if you have seen when you then bring the builders into the room, into the design discussions, can you better instill some of these sort of more tactical fundamentals? Meaning responsibility, and because I believe in the construction process, right, we are trained more tactically to demand accountability, whereas in the design phase that's not so much. But when we blend those two organizations together, if you can get the contractors to step up in the room, much to Digby's challenge perspective, can you then improve those things in the design process?
I think it's possible, but I think we need a better mind shift and better understanding of the design process and how it is integrated into the construction process. Specifically, increasing the knowledge of addressing the buildability issues at the right time. I think the contractors, especially which in these projects, they didn't have a clue for what kind of buildability issues were to be discussed at which time. The 3 projects which are shown here was Skanska projects, design-build projects, so the contractors was present, but again, not aware of what was going on. Because the contractor in the project was focusing on starting to build, so they were just anticipating the drawings to be finished, and the design process is not interested. Yeah. So there's a lot of learning to do. Yeah.
Derek Drysdale. Skanska is one of our major contractors in the UK, by the way. They get very good scores on our maturity assessment. So Skanska UK is quite forward thinking in the lean fraternity. We've come across this problem, and you highlight it extremely well regarding meetings and inefficient meetings. And actually, meetings are a way of communicating. And about 4 years ago, we went with Unipar, which is a major automotive organisation, distributor in the UK, and they came and gave us some consultancy work. And now we've adopted visual management in our meetings. And we have a guide on our website. If anyone just goes into our, types in Highways Agency Lean Construction, looks in guides. There's a guide, I've got a copy here in my iPad, that we now use. And it covers stand-up meetings, visual management, the use of boards, and boards that give performance, countermeasures about performance, the ability to issue PPC, And we find them very, very effective, so much that my own team uses them. And we measure how well we meet activities. And we put smiley faces and sad faces. There's no blame. It's all about why did it not happen. I'm sure we can find a countermeasure. So I think it's a very, very important issue of culture. And by changing the meeting structure, using visual management, you can change a culture. There's much more communication. So it's
I agree.
It's working now. But it highlights an issue that we all don't like to talk about. Meetings take minutes but last hours. So go have a look at our website. The guide's freely available. It's PDF. You can download it. One for maintenance, one for construction, one for design. They all say the same thing. They're improving the method of meeting. Very good.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you for all your questions. You'll have a chance now to talk more to the speakers. We'll have a 15-minute coffee break. We're serving coffee in the hall, and go out into the garden if you'd like. The weather is nice today, so we'll meet back here at 1 minute to 11. Great, thank you. welcome back. We'll have a session with 3 new presenters now before we go to lunch. And our next presenter is a property manager at Statsbygg. She has employed lean principles in a rehabilitation project. And here today she will talk about her experiences with the use of lean in a rehabilitation project in a more than 100-year-old building. Please give a hand of applause to Anne Kolstad.
Thank you. My name is Anne Kolstad. I work in Statsbygg in the Western region as a property manager. And I have the responsibility for 6 prisons on the west coast. And well, when we got the invite to talk to you about our project, it was obvious that it had to be Sverre Øgård, our project leader, who presented, since he knows the project best. But since the project in Haugesund was such a success, he doesn't have time because he's already doing a new course in lean with the Arendal prison. Well, in March this year, we installed a sprinkler system in Haugesund prison. It is a closed unit with high security. It's built in 1913 and consists of 18 one-man cells and a total of 1,300 square meters. It is situated in a residential area in Haugesund. We had a fire condition analysis done, and it told us that a complete sprinkler system is if we install that, other and more comprehensive requirements would be omitted. It is a closed prison with high security, and that implies that all openings and cavities in the construction during the project are potential hideaways for drugs and weapons. And there's also a great risk of vandalism on the facility. The sprinkler system therefore had to be, it could not be used as a weapon or in any way help inmates hurt themselves or others. That implies that all pipes in areas where inmates reside alone or without supervision has to be, all the pipes has to be hidden in the construction. And this, that's something that's kind of different from most office buildings and makes the prison a more special project. And another thing that complicates the contractors has to be approved by the criminal administration system before going in, and that's regardless of the prisoner being inside the prison or not. And there's also restrictions for photographing inside the prison. So all the photos we had delivered out to the contractors, they couldn't take their own pictures, and when planning the project. Also, normally in projects, the workers can use their phones, have them with them, but inside the prison, they have to leave them outside or with the guard. And that is a disadvantage, as the workmen inside and outside the prison cannot communicate. But it's very nice so that they don't get interrupted when working inside the prison. When Sverre and I, we were at some of the the meetings where they talked about experiences in other projects in I went too far. Because normally the prison has to be operational at all times. We have long queues for imprisonment, and that has led to the decision that prisons shall not be shut down for maintenance. And we communicated to the criminal administration system that if we did one cell at a time, it would take about 90 days. But if we could shut down the whole prison, it would be closed for 2 weeks, and then the inmates could move back in again. And with the inmates inside the prison, it would include a much higher security risk. If the criminal administration system required a very short implementation period as a condition for shutting down the prison. So they only gave us 2 weeks for doing the work in the 18 cells. There would be no prisoners inside the prison and only one guard in entrance. And the fence had to be closed, but for the first time in little over 100 years, all the doors in the prison could be open. And as the prison was completed in 1913, there was a lot of uncertainty about what we would find inside the walls of materials and other things. The reason why we decided on lean was, first of all, we knew that Statsbygg had several projects completed after lean principles during the last years, but we didn't think it was that many of them who were completed who had been rehabilitation. It's mainly new constructions. And since our office is very close to NHH, the Norwegian School of Economics, where Statsbygg used lean when building a new building, we listened in on a few of the meetings about the experiences in that project, and we were intrigued by what they had accomplished. And that's why we started thinking about lean in this project. Then we got the 2 weeks deadline for completing the sprinkler system, and we had to start seriously thinking about how we're going to manage that. Our project was pilot in several ways. We're not sure, but we think that lean hasn't been used in that many rehabilitation projects in Statsbygg yet. And we know for certain that in Region West, none of the project leaders have used lean in any project. And the criminal administration system, our contacts there have not used lean in any project they have had in prisons in Norway. And it's, yeah. We planned the construction period we had 2 construction periods. The first, we installed a sprinkler system in the prison's administration and classrooms as a regular project, so no lean, only the normal mess. And then in the second period, we installed a sprinkler system in the cells and in the areas around after lean principles. So it's we can compare some, but it's very different types of rooms, and there were inmates in the cells when we were doing the administration, and it wasn't any. There were only 1 man at the prison when we were doing the cells, so it's not really comparable. But the criminal administration system learned a lot about what they can accomplish if they empty the prison. We started with a course, a general course about lean for the workmen at the project. As Statsbygg has a special responsibility for as a role model for the construction industry, on that basis, it was considered equally important to secure a broad understanding of lean as to create a project-specific training. Therefore, it was decided to run a lean course that was not project-specific. The course, the contractor paid for his employees' hours, and Statsbygg paid for training facilities and the lecturers. And we considered the whole project course. We had an external lean facilitator who followed the project during the planning and the 2 weeks of implementation. And we also consider him, the facilitator, also being the same as the lecturer. We look at that as a success factor for our project. All workmen participated in the planning process, not only the foreman and project leader. And we had 3 full days of planning in advance of the project. Quick response from the consultant throughout the construction period, and he also attended all meetings in the planning process. Every day started with a 10 to 15 minute meeting to go through the plan of the day and get important information out to everyone at the site. Our results. We had a meeting to discuss experiences after the project was completed. And the contractors told us that they would like to use elements from Lean in future project. They would like to do future project by Lean principles. However, it is hard to, if only one participating company wants to do so. So we found out that it has to be initiated by the building owner. And also we found that if we had not tried last planner in exercise at the course before starting the actual project, there would have been a lot more noise from the workmen and contractors during the project planning. And because all of them were present at the planning, it was possible to find good solutions that we would never have found if they hadn't been there. We had 3 flaws. Well, when after the inspections on completion, they only had 3. There were only 3 mistakes or things that went wrong during the project, and that's a new record for us. And the workers claimed they could have performed at the same intensity for 3 years, a project for 3 years. However, the condition was that it wasn't 12 hours a day, but 8 as normal in Norway. The prison, they had very good experiences as well. Det er den siste. Yeah. The presence board, it was right in front of us. It was inside of prison because of fire hazard and fire precaution. We made a presence board that could show the guard if the workmen were inside or outside the prison, if an alarm should go off. The prison administration told us that if they could have done it all again, they would have chosen to do lean the whole project because predictability is essential for the prison. And we said we had 18 days in total for the project, and the contractors did it in 15, I think. So we had even better results than we planned on. The prison used the moving out of the inmates as a full-scale evaluation exercise. That always includes a risk, but the criminal administration system considered the risk minimal set against the risk of having the inmates inside the prison during the project. Yeah. Yeah. I think that was it.
Thank you, Anna. I think it's very nice to hear that you're actually using lean on a short rehabilitation project like that, because I've sometimes heard in the past that no, this project is way too little to apply lean. So I think it's very good that you've done that. Any questions for Anna? Or comments or thoughts?
Some information, actually. The British Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Justice in the UK, a guy called Terry Stotts heads up the prison programme or the building programme, and they use lean routinely now. So I don't know if you made contact with them, but if you need someone to serve as a role model for your own organisation for using lean, if you need to describe or persuade it to your senior staff, Terry would be a good person to speak to. It was an excellent presentation. The size is irrelevant. It's made a good point. It's more about what you did. You touched on every single area, virtually, of lean in that one example. Very good.
It's a good example of lowering the river to reveal the rocks, isn't it? Okay, any more? No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to, I can speak into this one now. Right, our next presenter is a project manager and one of the real driving forces of lean at Statsbygg. He has acquired knowledge of lean, among others, through courses and experiences from the Porsche Academy. He has previously managed lean design projects and is currently managing a project in which lean approaches will be used in all aspects of design and construction. And he is here to share some thoughts on how to use lean in construction to achieve improved effects. Please give a round of applause to Hans Thomas Holm. Sorry, your slide.
This one? Yeah, the slides might be helpful.
You might want to use your own slides. Yeah.
And while she's at it, hello, my name is Hans Thomas Holm. I use normally just Thomas. Currently managing the Academy of Art and Design in Bergen. The Norwegian abbreviation is KHIB, so if that comes later on, it's just the same thing in Norwegian. I've been working with lean construction since 2010, probably. Got the interest in 2009, and that's why, with this project, trying to get it also into the design phase, which is quite interesting and very challenging. Not quite sure. So this is actually, I think, a development from your dragon. Not quite sure if it's in the right direction, but design is maybe how we feel. It's how to handle an elephant, because it's huge, it's enormous, and it's not steerable in any way. So that's why I chose this animal to sort of try to express how we're dealing with this in our project. So I'm not coming into the lean construction as such, because that will be the next stage for 2016 and 17 when we go into the construction in our project. But yes, it will come there. So now is our main focus on how to do the design as good as possible. Some facts about the project. It was actually a design competition in 2005. I wasn't present at that point. I started with this project last year. We got the final construction work fundings, because it's a state project. It's also funded by the state, June, which is actually more or less exact a year ago. Billion, largely, Norwegian kroners. The floor space is 14,500. We have a schedule. We do the detailed design now. Hope to finish that more or less next year, and then continue then with the construction, the foundation works, and the frameworking next year. We do the demolition and the ground preparations in these days. Scheduled completion is second quarter of 2017. That would mean actually May somewhere. Statsbygg is the owner and the client. Snøhetta, who has done the opera here in the city, and several other very spectacular projects, are the architects, and the designing engineers are Rambøll. The background motivation for doing lean on this project is the project I had the last couple of years, Domus Medica, for the University in Oslo. It has been the seminars where I participated myself with Porsche Consulting, which then gives again the ideas about how to build, construct work in the takt, and then following the trained sequence while doing this. And of course my own motivation is the film clips probably a couple of you have seen from China, the China constructions, how to build 30 floors building in 14 days. I wouldn't say that we will be getting to that one, but it is a motivation of things are possible. That is at least my motivation. So as an objective, we would like to have a very lean project. And by the way, the presentation will be given out or sent to you also, so if there are, you don't need to do the photos of this all the time. You can though. We had a plan on this project, a strategy, how to do it as lean as possible, in design as well as in construction. Maybe the other way around, because we know the construction and now we do it in the design. And lean on all levels and in all phases. And we just decided very early on, we use BIM, and we use something called the DROFUS, which is a room functional database. We just use it and no discussion about it, and then we go on. Taking on then this strategy is our couple of principles which we wanted to have in our project, and that's the transparency. We want everyone to have the overview, to collaborate. Culture was mentioned a little bit earlier today, and how to do that in a good way. Not easy, but we also wanted to have this culture for the continuous improvement, how to get better all the time, and in this case then trying to do it on the design. We have put a lot of lean say, comments in the contract documents and the descriptions and so on, so everyone coming into the project knows about that this is what we would like the project to be. And I think that's very important as we progress. And we have put in some extended lean requirements for the contractors. Already a year ago, we said this in a presentation for the industry in the Bergen area. Bergen is, for you who don't know, on the west coast of Norway. And we took in we asked market research just to see how the knowledge about lean were, and half of the contractors said, if that's on, we can't participate. But on the other hand, we now have told them what to come so they can prepare, hopefully. And then again, reduce, minimize, or even preferably eliminate the waste that is within the project. Get as much flow as possible, maximize front loading. I would say things that are general knowledge for lean projects. But how do we do it on this project, the KHIB, step by step? What has been our plan so far? And we started up with a pre-seminar, which we held in February. And that was actually to discuss, prepare the lean construction strategy, getting the designers to know the construction. How would we actually like to build this building? And that was a very good way for them to get to know the building. Looked like this. We had some A0 drawings, big one. They were laminated, so you can sort of draw on them and take it away again and draw again, which is a good way to discuss. In minor groups, we had 4 in our case because it's a 4-floor building, and they came, fun enough, to more or less the same way of looking at it, which may look chaotic in this one. It's the 2nd floor, but starting in this end and going out to the edges of the building. Horseshoe-shaped building, and interesting to see that they came to the same sort of results, and we will try to mix this also together when we then actually come to the actual construction. Second step is then to have a mind shift, how to get the overview. And here again we used Porsche Consulting. This time, not for the construction seminar, which we have used before, but we said, all right, let's do the product creation process, which they have used successfully for other industries as well, and the PCP process. We didn't really know what we were supposed to get. I do admit that one. On the other hand, it was a way to get the team together, change the culture, change their minds. This is how it was presented in the start from Porsche. They said, yeah, well, you will be getting a standard process map. And the key word here is actually process. How to see all processes from where we are now at the start of the detailed design phase, and then to the end of the building, when it's finished when the construction is finished. So we define every kind of activity in this process, which then is called a maximum process map because all kind of activities are in there. But if you then take it and use it for specific other projects, you can take out the things you don't need, marked with the crosses, and sort of make it independent and individual for later projects. This is the first one ever done, at least in Stadsbygg. And I would assume, but I'm not quite sure, also Norway. How to start that process? Well, again, with the post-it notes, defining different processes, defining different, in our terminology, keystones. But we also said that, well, we don't, and that's what you can maybe see on the top, we don't change the phases that we use for projects in our company. Those are the same. And the major milestones should also be the same. But it was then a discussion on how the building will be built, how the processes are to be done, and where are the different key stones, looking a little bit more like this, more detailed, defining them, describing them, which again, at the end of these 1+1 weeks, gave a very good transparency. Everyone in the project now we're on the same page. So now we actually can, in terms of leadership also, lower a little bit the decision making. Makes my job as a manager easier, and we can sort of, everyone now can make decisions on a little bit lower levels. But we still have the same goal, we have the same direction, and we know what everyone else also is doing. This is then from post-it notes into the digital version, and we see here again on the top, the phases and the milestones are maintained. Here are the processes. We defined 7 of them. Milestones, key points are actually smaller milestones, but just to make a difference in the wording, we said these are the key points. They are sort of new. Funny thing then is that doing all this job, having in mind the tact and the train and the construction, lean construction, it was the question then immediately from the design group, well, and how are we doing the tacting and the train when doing the design? Question mark. Everyone a little bit confused because they wanted a sort of level 2 and 3 in the design phase, what we in Norwegian call prosjektering. So we had the PCP level 1 map, made it together, we were on the same page, we had the same mind. We also had the same objectives. We knew this one from the car industry. We know how it can be done when we do the construction. And those are the principles. So we have minds full of a lot of theory and a lot of expectations. Now what? Which is interesting. And from here on, it's a little bit where our project has walked and tried to develop it. Listening to Digby's presentation earlier, it seems like a lot of the same things. You have maybe already done this thinking, or maybe not. I'm not quite sure. We can always exchange that. But our question was, for our project, now what? And then we're back to the elephant. Get that one. Huge, unhandleable thing into more manageable, minor pieces, and lots of them. How to then have the continuous flow, how to restructure the flow according to the contracts and the milestones, and try to get all the different topics or even issues in with their appointed owners. We decided on, or we found out that a 2-week work tact is a good way of doing it, and we have a 3-day big room co-location with the architects, Snøhetta. So every 2 weeks for 3 days, which actually starts today, they come together and sort of sit. We'll see that in a couple of minutes. Continuous priority on these issues, and that would change continuously every 2 weeks as well. And as a goal maybe is to have the design is by nature an iteration process. But instead of doing the regular 4 steps forward and 3 backwards, we try to do the 5-1. At least we hope so. And efficiency. Let's do it 80% efficient and at 20% of the time spent instead of doing the 100-100, which makes us move forward quicker. So it looks a little bit like this. Again, the hand drawings are always good. We knew the physical building, and we have the BIM virtual building. Milestones I've just indicated with these red circles. And we know we have a couple of contracts coming up, indicated here as K20 and X. But then again, knowing all this, because that's how a building, the life cycle of a building is done, we try now to split up these topics. And that's where the elephant is sliced up in pieces. So right now we're working on the topics kind of workflow, where every topic has its owner and have sub-issues. It looks like this. So in this case, we have the owner, and he has this topic. He pulls in the information from others, to a given deadline where, in this case, this topic should have an answer. And that is a way, in the early stages, which have been now in March, April, and May, to land strategy questions. And now, after the summer, we will go into more detailed topics and sort of resolve them also much quicker than hopefully has been done before. And we found out very quickly that this is a drawing then to illustrate that, well, a couple of the topics might not only be used for 2 weeks, they maybe go for 4 or 6 weeks, but that's an illustration just to see where we are, and then try to use the 5 R's as well, at the right time, the right product, right quality, and so on. But then we found out, yeah, well, have this 2-week tact. And in the 2-week tact, we have this 3-day co-location. Today, the first hour of today, they have been looking backwards. What have we done and what have we accomplished the last weeks? And then, which will be coming soon on the next, one of the next slides, a lot of meetings, small guerrilla groups maybe, where people, the owners of the issues, come together, seek the others, and try to resolve many of these topics. And then at the end, which would be Thursday afternoon, look forward. What are we to accomplish for the next 2 weeks? Which is a very efficient way of walking forwards and trying to avoid the minutes, as was also mentioned a little bit earlier. This is then another way of just describing the same thing. Yes, we are in unfamiliar territory in trying to developing and improving this lean design process, but it looks more or less like this, how we're doing it. We have the PCP plan, the overall project, so everyone knows about that one. And now we just took it a little bit down and said we look at the design phase with the design group. So we then just more or less log-wise list the topics, the red circle. But again, the topics are split up a little bit following the different processes. So there's a connection. The processes 1, 2, 3 on the left side follow the P1, process 1, 2, 3 on the left side. So there is a connection between those two things. We had the visual planning comment a little bit earlier, goes on this side, and that connects this plan, the level 2 plan, with then the separate different topics. So the owner, one owner person has his or her plan, and they follow them, a lot of them. They put them together on that overview, and that has been done Tuesday early or Thursday late to see how they connect. This is then how it looks when you put it in an Excel spreadsheet. This is the level 2 project design plan. And again, we see the levels 2 and 3 connecting with the PCP plan on the top. The different processes is how they're split up. Topics, owners, priorities, status. Or even the visual planning, which is the one where they come together and look. The same thing then, a couple of photos. This is the 3-day meeting schedule done today, tomorrow, and Thursday. So they sort of go in and book meetings to resolve a couple of topics. And then when they come and put on the visual planning up where we are, who has to resolve what, everything in front of each other, and then we just have these 15, 20 people maybe, 1.5 hour Tuesday morning, 1.5 hour Thursday afternoon. This is where everyone gets aligned and on the same page. With the stickers, so they write down what are my problems, who can give me what kind of information, present it. This is then what we'll be doing, and that's the extended use of lean tech planning and construction with the contractors. And I also decided that when we do the contracting of the different contractors, because there will be a couple of them, we will always start with a contract review, the contract handover, and that is when design meets contractors in the contracting stage. Do the front loading, putting the puzzle together. How are we actually going to sort of get the contractor on board and then do the lean construction? We will also, though, however, have a, and that was mentioned also a little bit earlier today, have a meeting. I think we're going to do that in September, and that is to sort of invite contractors in Norway just to say, are we on track with what we are doing? And I think that's also a good idea, just to say it's open. Everyone can come, have a look. This is how we're planning it now. Are there any comments? You will actually be bidding on this project a year from now. Are what we are doing okay as it seems? And I think that is a thing, a little bit untraditional thing to use for a project like this. And as these processes are ongoing, these are things to come we are developing. And this presentation is a little bit where we are right now. And our goal is to get that fish in the vertical position and get the building constructed very good, hopefully. And a quick summary at the end, getting a common mindset for all parties involved, and that is from the top and all the way down to the bottom. Having the common objectives and tools, and the agreed transparency, and also then having this idea about how to do the strategy, the lean strategy for the whole project. And that's for Mindshift as well as construction and design. Getting this process overview, it's sort of all in, which again was mentioned before with the culture, and sort of if there's someone who actually not is on the track with the rest, maybe this person should be either on another project or do another sort of task. Agreeing on the minor pieces, which has been very good, and that's sort of handling the elephant, getting in the continuous flow. Assign the topics, issues, owners, work procedures, decision levels. I've eased my work a lot, having the design manager in a little group together with the architect coordinator and the engineering coordinator. So those three are doing a lot of decisions because I've pushed that a little bit down. And under them again are very good engineers or architects or landscape architects who then again can take on their level their decisions. Makes it easier also to work vertically. The big room transparency, I'm very in favor of that. And yeah, getting the pieces together using BIM, and then finally the construction. If time, and I think there is, questions. And at the end of the presentation, who am I? And even the design manager, for those who are wondering about that.
Question about your processes. Were any of the parties involved external, or were they all within the same house? As far as contract lines and contractors, consultants, owners, etc.
Stadsbygg is a company who is doing the top management, really. So we contract the engineers, the architects. So everyone has been contracted to the project and, as a matter of fact, becoming in-house. But they are, as companies, more or less everyone out-house, external. Up there is a question. But I would again say that's a way of creating, hopefully, a culture.
Yeah, my question is about, obviously you are a public owner, and when you procured architecture and design engineering, did they know what kind of process you are going to have in this project?
Yes. Well, that is Snøhetta, where the designers, the architects, already from 2005. But it was not difficult, actually, to convince them that this is a way at least we can try, because there's actually nothing to lose. The downside is this little, the upside is enormous. And I said, yes, sure, we try that.
Yeah, the other question was about the education issue. So the Porsche Consulting was helping you, so they were involved with the training program as well.
Yeah, and it's been the training program as such, and I didn't mention that on the way here, but that we leveled everyone at the start, the first half day of those 2 weeks together with Porsche. We invited the Swedish Niklas Modig, who is, I would say, the lean expert, at least in Scandinavia, and probably known major parts of the world as well. He has been, or he was the first non-Japanese invited to Toyota, who then also learned Japanese and has studied that. And also a very good reference to his book, What is Lean? Described simple and I would say just common language. You get a way of thinking the philosophy, and not just going into tools. How can we resolve this quickly? And he gave us a very good head start the first day, and everyone was talking and thinking, and they said, where is the camera? Is it on the house, the construction, who's getting information, or is it, as also mentioned earlier, in the silos? Is it me and my thing I'm doing? Where is the perspective? And that was a very good start, sort of flushing on or getting everyone on the same page, then going into a little bit more on the the methods, let's put it this way, the methods, together with Porsche Consulting. And we know, and as I'm saying, we haven't started that yet, but that will come, which is a part of our plan, the construction lean education. Back there was the hand first.
Having set up this process in the design stage, and how do you hope to drive this to the construction stage, specifically in selecting the contractors that will be doing the construction?
Hopefully I'm answering you right. And we are a public procurement company. So we have to put in some of those requirements in the contracts as we send it out. But we put in, and I'm also writing at a document which should have go into the top documents, saying we want people who come in or companies who come in to use lean philosophy, and they sort of need to buy in on the planning together, on the tacting, and so on, and have that philosophy in place. And we put it in as a requirement of some percentage, I haven't decided on that yet, that you need to have lean knowledge, competence, maybe even experience before you actually get in. So that's a way of just steering the contractors in having the right mindset before they come in. I hope that answers your questions. Digby, you had your hand up.
So just a question of clarification. So you may have like contractual restrictions, but do you have any trade side involvement on the process right now? Wasn't clear because you said
No, and that is what I picked up here before. And I said the trade involvement would be an open seminar, and that's why I'm saying we'll try to get that on in, say, early September, because July is vacation here in Norway, and August probably is a slow start for everyone either way. But then in September we do a seminar meeting, 4 hours, 5 hours, something, and just invite all the contractors and say, are we on track here? And that would be the trade involvement.
Okay. Do you have contractual restrictions that you have to handle it that way, or?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Those are no restrictions in the contract handling.
Okay.
Unless someone says, you can use my kind of method which we have in our company in your project. That would be a no-go.
Oh, okay.
But on principles in general, and what we're doing right, that is okay.
Right. And then just one comment. It was interesting because on the project I was describing, we also had almost exactly the same structure, just completely. We met every 2 weeks for 2 days. The first part of the 2 days was what happened in the last 2 weeks. Then we had breakout meetings to solve all the problems. And then we had, at the end, what are we going to do in the next 2 weeks? So it was interesting.
I was in fact wondering, do I need my presentation because you had already done it? So
no.
Just change the animal.
I'm just saying, on the current project, we're meeting for 1 day every week. And it's the only difference is we don't have anybody who has to fly in, so we can meet every week.
Yeah.
So it's this kind of environment in the design phase seems to be a
Yeah.
good
But we have two companies. I mean, the Snøhetta are in Oslo, and Rumble also are in Oslo. And yes, the project as such is in Bergen, but Rumble has an office also in Bergen. But they've decided we do the design phase here now with the resources we have. And then when we go to Bergen, we use that office to sort of flip over the experiences done so far, and they follow then the construction part, which is a good thing.
Any more questions for Thomas? Yep.
He's getting good at the stairs.
From Stadsbygg as well. And I was thinking, I think you used the building project model, the management model, byggeprosjektmodellen in Stadsbygg. I think you showed a picture of it.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, how do we use Lean with our quality management system? How do the two links?
Let's see if we can find that picture here as well, somewhere. The comment then would be that one comment is the process thinking is, at least in our company, quite new. We're still just on a lot of activities, and then linking them together in processes, that is something I guess we're developing right now. And that's interesting. But then to the quality things that we do in our company is, I think we have it on this line. And that's one of our processes. It's the quality assurance process. And we sort of, these are a lot of activities into the process, but they're also now put in logically. So that one activity comes not at the end, it has to be there. And the map as such is, the different figures here is who is responsible for doing it. But that is where the link is to the quality system in Stadsbygg as such. All right.
Yep.
In that case, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. So we have one more presenter before lunch. And he's also a project manager at Stadsbygg. He's in the early phases of a construction project in which he will use partnering agreements and Lean. In his presentation, he will address challenges associated with initiation of partnering and collaboration approaches, and Lean in the design and building phase. Please welcome Torgeir Høyem. Okay. Yeah. There we go.
Okay. My name is Torgeir Høyem, and I'm a project manager at Stadsbygg. And Stadsbygg wishes to start using Lean in our new building project. So I was asked by the management if I could think of trying to use Lean in our next project. I thought about it and I accepted the challenge. So this is how I'm thinking to introduce Lean concepts to our partners in a construction project. And writing this thesis or this presentation, I just made a working title, just call it Kickstarting Lean. Yes. I will not say too much about Stadsbygg because it's been mentioned already, but we have to follow public procurement. And we also have decided to use BIM in all our projects, and now we want to start using Lean. So the goal of my project is to start using Lean. Simple as that. So why did I accept the challenge to start using Lean in my new project? I've been reading about Lean construction, and I've also been taking a course in Lean production at the university. And from my own experience, I could see that all the 7 wastes described in the literature are present all the time in the site. And I think the biggest problem on construction sites I've seen is the lack of planning. Because the lack of planning affects the coordination between trades, and then in the end, nobody really knows how far we have come in the construction. And I also saw yesterday that people mentioned that that they believe that the lack of planning also gives poor performance in safety work at the site. In many projects of Statsbygg, I know that the project manager from Statsbygg and the construction manager both use 1 year full time after the project is finished, just to go and fix defects and problems in the building when it's finished. So, and then even then, I don't think we find every defects that are built into the building. So in the end, I don't think we get the quality that we are paid for. Yeah. This is not an important slide, but it's just I was taking this course. I was going to do a value stream mapping of working, what we are doing. And it's we're trying off a building site, but in the end it's just a chaos. It's not possible to do overall value stream mapping. So the problem I was, so taking this challenge about lean, there were 3 questions that I had to ask myself. It's does the main contractor know lean? Does the main contractor want to use lean? And is my understanding of lean the same as the main contractor's understanding of lean? So just some words about the project. It's a new office building. It's about 2,500 square meters. It's 4 floors with basement. It's a turnkey project. And the site is located in a small city called Bodø. It's about 50,000 inhabitants, and it's in the northern part of Norway. So there will not be an infinite numbers of entrepreneurs wanting to make an offer. So then it's I was thinking, how can I make lean happen in my project? And I was thinking about this, thinking about this, I thought it was some criteria I needed to come true or were necessary for this to come true. So first of all, the main contractor needs to have an organization of a certain size. And this, yeah, and this is the organization of the project, where Statsbygg has a project manager and we have a construction manager that are working directly for us. Then the entrepreneur, the main contractor, he comes with his project management and he has all his subcontractors and all the consultants under him. But my experience is sometimes that from the entrepreneur it can be like a one-man show. This thing, they think that the fewer people they have on the site, the more money they earn, and I think it's the opposite. I think that you really need to have a certain amount of people to run a project properly. So this is one of the criteria in the bidding. You have to presentate the organization for yourself. Yeah. Yeah, it's sometimes I'm seeing this project manager of the entrepreneur. When you're giving him you're complaining about it, he just takes the paper and he gives it to his subcontractor, and then the subcontractor replies and he gives it back to you, and you do really no work on it. It's just bringing papers back and forward. And also Statsbygg, as a company, we have started to have more people on the sites ourselves. Before it maybe used to be one project manager on, you have 2 to 4 projects, but now we are more like 1 to 2 project managers on one project, depending on the size. And then we also have much more construction managers. Yeah. Can I use this? Yeah. Organization. My second criteria is the organization of the project. They have to use this big room. It's like an example of a big room. And then they also the organization, the entrepreneur's organization has to meet in this room like 2 days in a row and like at least every second week. And with the project organization, I'm saying that they have to meet with the main contractor, the project manager, and the project management with him, the consultants, and the subcontractors. And that's just to make sure that all the people that are necessary for my project at least are using 2 full days in my project every second week. Or else I'm fearing they're using their time on different projects. So this is just a kind of schedule we are sending to the bidders. At least they have to fulfill. Yeah, and then it's like my third criteria is like they will be given one course in Lean, which everybody has to participate in. This is so we all understand Lean in the same way, and when we later discuss how to apply Lean, we know that we'll be talking about the same thing. And in the papers for the bidding competition, it is stated that the chosen entrepreneur, he has to use what he has learned in this course in the project. And we will also offer him an expert that can come to him and help him to apply things. And by doing this, it's not like, of course, if they can find the philosophy of Lean, it's very good, but it's not really important for me. The most important thing for me is that I hope that the entrepreneur, the consultants, and the subcontractors would find the concept of Lean construction interesting. And then by himself starting to want to use it. Yeah, and in the contract with the with the entrepreneur, I has like before we start every phase, me, my contract. Sorry, I have to just. Yeah, me and my construction manager is the word. Yeah, me and my construction manager and the project manager for the entrepreneur, we're going to sit down together before every phase and discuss what are we going to use in the next phase. What kind of tools are we going to use? How do we want to apply this? And then also, if we had a phase before, we will try to evaluate what happened last phase. But and this is like it's the only thing I can achieve, and this is the minimum I will accept. Is that they have to use last planner, and they have to use the measuring this plan % completed. And if I can manage those 2 things, I'll be happy. I don't need anything more. Thank you.
Thank you, Torgeir. Any questions for Torgeir? There's a couple. Should we start up there with Morten?
Thank you, Torgeir, for a very interesting presentation. I'm just curious, have you set any goals for what you are going to achieve by using Lean in terms of cost reducing, time reducing, quality improvements, etc.?
Not really, because this is like a turnkey project, so I have to go for a bidding. I just have to the management just wanted me to try this in. But my only goal is that if they can plan the project properly, I'll be super happy. Because it's like sometimes you want to cry going out in the buildings. It's like, and it really can't become worse. That is already is. So
There was one here, William, second row.
Thank you very much. I would like to know that based on your explanation, there is a mandatory for the stakeholders to follow, to join a lean course to make sure that everybody have the same understanding about lean. Is there any problem you face during how to achieve the same understanding, maybe because everyone can have the same different perception or different goals. That's why maybe we have to set common goals for everyone to be achieved. Thank you.
No, in a way, I was thinking giving them the same course. They, we always understand lean in the same way, but I really think that, or I was saying to them that we are going to have a meeting together before we start, and we're going to discuss lean, how to do it, and then it's, I don't know how to explain it more, but and then with the expert we will offer them, they will help to achieve lean the way we are thinking of it.
So it's not a problem to have everybody's approve. This is our goal, the same.
It's hard to answer. I hope not, but they're saying when signing the contract that they will go for it. So it's one of the requirements of the contract. Yes. We have made a little paper on lean, like what does Statsbygg mean about lean, what is lean, and it also states what we really want to achieve, and it's yeah.
Thank you.
Fourth, sorry.
You stated that you thought Statsbygg would need more representation. Can you tell me why you think that, and then how does that make economic sense? The more people cost more money.
Yeah. First of all, I know that we have 2 people going full time on the project when it's finished, and if we can just cut these people, we can use these people in before when they are constructed instead of doing it afterwards when we are finished. So it's just to and then in the end when you're walking there when the project is finished, it's like you're just taking I don't know if you have this expression, just taking the top of the iceberg. It's just 10% over the waterline. This is the only thing you can see afterwards. So I don't know if you would save so much money, but we at least get better quality, I think.
When you are about to select your contractors, do you ever set a minimum requirements of knowledge to lean, or do you always plan on teaching them or to bring them on the same page? Do the contractors ever get any credit for being foresighted, making sure they have a certain level of lean knowledge themselves?
We haven't done this project because it's like a small city, and I don't know how many bidders we will have then. So it's like, I guess in maybe 10 years' time, if lean is more popular, it's like it's possible, but not now.
Yeah. Digby and then Morten.
So one word of caution for maybe if there's some owners in the room. Be wary of companies that say that they're good at lean, because it might be true. What you need is the actual human beings that in that company. Even the most progressive lean companies typically only have a very small number of people who understand what lean is. So companies are out there representing themselves as lean, and it's marketing. I won't say it's a lie, but It's the usual bait and switch, right? There are lean companies that will present themselves as lean and then give you people that don't know the first thing about it. And then those people are off pitching the next project to try and get more business. There's a business opportunity for companies, so you have to, if you really want to get them, you basically what we've started to do is basically say, in a more traditional way, you will give us this human being, and if you remove him from the project, you will pay us $250,000, and et cetera, because you need the people. And the other thing is that also be a bit wary of lean training. Because what I found is you can give people 2 weeks of lean training, but they still don't know what to do the first day afterwards. And what you really need to do is make sure that any lean training tells people what they will do for the first hour of the first day after the lean training is complete. So, that's my experience from running projects, is it's really, you need people to behave in a certain way day to day on the project.
It's Morten, and then back to... He can do the running up and down.
Well, first I had a short comment on Bill's question about the economics. You answered halfway, Torge. We are also a property manager, and the real economics is in the life cycle costs of running the building for 50 to 60 years. That's where the big money are. And the second, it's a piece of advice to Torge, or one experience we did in a project in Stadsbygg. It's to have an exercise. When you get your team, have an exercise the first day and see how they cooperate. And then you can come in and mentor them or train them specifically. But just let them try and see how they get it done.
But we have in the contract that we will be in all the lean meetings when they're starting to do it. We will be there too. So to monitor the process.
Just one or two comments, really. From our own experience, the waste you mentioned, we use a mnemonic called Tim Woods for your transports inventory. And the S at the end stands for skills. It's an added waste, because very often, I reflect very much on the comments made about training. If you give people learning and development rather than training, it works better. That means you have a coach on board all the time who works alongside them and embeds the training and understanding. And the other comment is, well done for taking the first step. Every journey is a cliche, but every journey is a first step. Do you have commitment from your senior management, your leadership in the organisation, or do we see this as very much a test area? And if it is, are they overviewing?
I don't think, I don't know how to answer that, because it's like, sometimes as a project manager, I guess you get like a project and then it's like come back in 3 years when you're finished. It's like, so it is. And as long as you're doing it on budget, nobody really cares. So.
Well, the advice really, from our own experience in the Highways Agency, the way to do it is to speak and connect with your leadership in your organisation to explain to them what you're doing and show them how you're progressing and persuade them to use it more widely if that's something you think is worthwhile, which I'm sure.
They really want to do it, but and they have some plans for that Stadsbygg will start using Lean all the way, but I don't know how this implementation is progressing. I don't know about that.
Yeah, and the point made about the contractors not walking the talk and having a sort of thin approach during tendering and then disappearing later is a real one. And that's why we use the maturity assessment tool to go into a supply chain and assess where they are in their competence in Lean in a deep dive. It's not just a shallow thing, we look by evidence in a deep dive. But absolutely, they will only give it to the client if they ask for it. If you don't ask, you don't get it.
I'd like to just follow up on that, because you mentioned that there are limited numbers of experienced lean contractors up in Bodø, which is probably true. And you earlier mentioned the soft pre-qualifications based on the soft qualifications. And how do you do it with the less experienced contractors that really would like to take a step forward and be lean? If they have no experience, how can they even bid? Yep.
I'm firmly of the opinion that it's a very easy thing to teach anybody. It just needs to be strongly and cleanly led. Or you really, at the very core culturally, you're just trying to get people to used to saying, I will get this done, and then getting it done in front of their peers. And then you can build outwards from that to sophisticated ways of planning whole cycles of work and tracking it. But at the core, it's extremely simple. And then once you have that, you can say, well, how could we improve this? But it's basically, the business is so poor in its normal way of doing it. Even the basic idea that you would say what you're going to get done and get it done is kind of revolutionary. So, I mean, I think anyone can do it. It's not a...
But my point was that they will have the opportunity to as long as they show willingness to go lean, they don't necessarily have to have all the experience to bid.
Yeah, you definitely, the willingness is the key, and that in a pre-qualification or a non-economically based selection process, you can select, you want to interview for that trait. And the first is the willingness to admit that they have no idea what you are talking about, because otherwise you get what Digby was talking about, where you get the marketing approach, yes, we know all about it, when they really don't. And that again becomes key to the absolute individual that you are selecting, not the ownership of the company or the marketing people of the company. So it's who do you talk to, what questions do you ask that are different than the traditional bid methodology. And oh, by the way, that sets the stage for the fact that this project is going to be different than a traditional project, and we expect it to be different than a traditional project. And oh, by the way, we're going to lead you through that process with some coaches or experts or trainers or something along those lines. So those are the important ingredients at the beginning of the process.
Just to reply to it's a good question, by the way, an excellent question. The problem we've got is in the UK, it has been for Europe, in the UK, our supply chain is relatively traditional in the way we deliver projects. We do have one or two like Skanska who've picked up from a European experience. So as a client spending £2 billion a year, and we've got currently replacing a £5 billion contract for major projects, we have to understand implicitly what lean means. We need to have an internal expertise, and that's what we've developed over 5 years. The other technique we use is we use this HALMAT, maturity assessment, and we feed it back to them. But we also pay for Sensei to work alongside the leadership of our major contractors. We're doing that with Mace and others, so that we can explain to their leadership what we mean by we can have that dialogue. It's a long game. It doesn't happen overnight. But I completely agree with the point. Lean is not complicated, and it can be done in stages. It can get quite complex, but in basics are very easy to do. And there's no mythology. It's quite simple. But I think there's a danger of some consultants maybe out there make it seem more complicated than it should be, right? Maybe because they're more advanced and they explain it in a more advanced way. But that's a very good point of simplicity.
Anyone else? Oh, we're about 5 minutes ahead of schedule. I think we'll say thank you very much to Torje. Right, we'll be serving lunch upstairs in this building. The weather is nice, so and we're serving wraps, so please feel free to go upstairs, get your lunch, and go out to spend an hour in the garden. And we'll be back here. Let me check the program for session 3 at 1:15. And one more thing, if any of you have any valuables at all left in the wardrobe, please bring it upstairs if you do leave the building, it's a bit more safe up there. So enjoy lunch, have lots of conversations, and see you back 1:15.